Hey, Miranda. Hey, Kathleen. Can you guys hear me finally? Let me know you can hear me. Yes. Hey, Sandy. I think it's working, Sandy. Thank you. I think we got there finally. Oh my, I'm sorry, guys. This has been a journey, and I still don't know why. All of a sudden, my audio just quit working on my computer. And my webcam, it was not talking anymore. Nothing was working. Even my computer was not, like, take it all apart. The girls couldn't even figure out why. It it's so weird. So I'm sure I'll figure it out in about a year or two. But till then, we now have StreamYard. So I've been wanting to do StreamYard, and I guess my computer just kind of went, okay, let's give you a push. So I think this is actually going to be really good because I was playing with the webcam with the girls before we came on here. And hey, Michelle, glad you finally found me. Sorry you didn't realize earlier. I was just putting up my live notification. Not that it really mattered because it still was later by about an hour and a half. But so I'm going to be able to move my camera now, my webcam, when I want to show you stuff on the computer. And yeah, I think this just might be the way to go. So since last week we were going to try and learn how to do a dress sash, why don't we try and do that tonight now that I'm finally over the hump? So this is the sash that we were going to do last week. Hey, Karen. It's just a simple, plain aqua blue sash out of a cotton. It has the 45-degree angle cuts on the corners so that when it hangs, and this one may not have a long hang on it, but even still, when it hangs, it has just a nice little edge to it. And you don't have to do these. You can do just a square one if you want, but I did mine with a 45 because they always look so cute. And yeah, hey, Maria. So glad everybody's finding me. Hey, Robin. Whoop whoop, Nairo, we got there. Yep, thanks Sandy and Nairo girls in the chat. They got on live with me on StreamYard and we figured it all out. None of us can figure out why my audio was not working. I don't know that I'm ever going to figure that out. It just might be that my computer is old and it decided to die. I don't know. So it doesn't matter. We've got this going now, and this is awesome. So yeah. So is anybody going to sew with me since we've been through this whole debacle? I'd be really surprised if somebody said yes, but if there is somebody, I want to know that you guys are thinking about sewing with me. If not, I will just go ahead and do the sew along, and you can follow along with me later if you want to come back on and do it again. But yeah, it seems like everything's that we talked about is working really good, girls, including the whole thing over there. So, yay. Bless you, girls. Bless you. I know what I'd do without my Discord girls. So, this is so awesome. Hey, Pia. Glad you found me again. This is going to be good. Now that I've figured this whole thing out, kind of, sort of, I'm sure I'm going to have a few speed bumps. And you guys will have to be a little patient with me if we run into some more. But I think some of the stuff I've been wanting to do might be a little easier because my brain's been working ever since. I've got Chloe. She just finally allowed me to let her out of her little cage. It's not little, it's ginormous. it's a dog cage for a very, very, very big dog. So she had lots of room to run around in there, but I wanted her to be able to run around in the studio, but she wasn't ready. She would like get really scared when I'd take her out. So anyway, the last couple of days, she was good with it, and I was slowly kind of expanding her world. I would pull some of the covers off because every time I'd pull too much off, she'd get really scared. So I just slowly pulled it and got her used to it, and now she's running around and loving life. I am so excited to watch her. Bear loves her. They play. In fact, it was funny. And the girls and I were talking, she made a huge noise, and they're like, "What just happened?" Well, you know how cats, um, when they use the litter box, sometimes they shoot out of there because it's just kind of what they do. They get all excited and run around. Well, she shot out of there and she tried to go between two objects. She's a little fatter than she thinks she is. And she kind of ping ponged in between them, and it made a lot of noise. And she was kind of like looking at me like, "What just happened?" And I'm like, "Oh, girl, I'm sorry. Your waistline's a little bigger than you thought." And it was pretty cute. So now she'll figure it out, but she's running around. So I don't know. Hope she has not jumped up here. Hopefully she never will. Bear only does occasionally. You've seen me have to kind of push him off, but I'm hoping she's just happy running around on the floor and over on the couch and up the steps and stuff. So if for some reason she runs across, bear with me, that'll be a first. So yeah. All right. That's okay. I kind of figured most people were going to just kind of watch, and that's all good, especially since we had the whole thing going on here that took me a while to get figured out. Um, yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about these sashes. You'll notice if you read my comments, the material list, about a half a yard. And if you want to make it longer than what we've got, I'll give you like the measurement kind of thing. The calculations are super easy. Um, and you can figure out if you need longer, then you might need a little bit more than a half a yard. But a half a yard should get it to where you can tie the bow with a bow and still have some length left. Now, the one that I'm doing tonight, just for the sake of uh, just making it easy for me, this one probably won't tie an actual bow. It'll just be a knot in the length that I'm using here. So we'll go over that when I talk about that. But maybe we'll just talk about, I'm sorry, I'm reading comments. I'm still trying to figure this out. Sorry, guys. Reading comments and trying to talk at the same time. Hey, Gail. Hey, Patty. So bear with me. Like I said, this whole thing is like new, and I'm kind of having a good time with this. So brain doesn't work when I'm like talking and looking, and I'll get it. I'll get there. I'll get there. But let's talk about fabrics. So if you read in the description when I gave you the material list, I said no knit. You can use any fabric you want, just no knit. And the reason why I say no knit is when you go to tie, it's going to stretch really badly and you may end up breaking your stitches. So if you choose to use knit, just realize that when you go to tie it, you have to be super, super careful. And even when you pull it to tie it, you can break the stitches here because it stretches so much. So if you choose to use knit, because that's maybe what you've got, or that's just the fabric that really, really works well for what you're going to use it for some reason, I would put interfacing in there only to keep it from stretching. And so then that would be, when we cut all this out, then you would just cut one more of everything out of interfacing. And then that'll be like your third layer. So we're going to do a sandwich. These are 2 layers. So you would just pretend like this is an Oreo cookie. And so the fabric is the chocolate part, and the interfacing would be that cream filling, and that's how you would put it together when it's done. But I will talk to you a little bit about how to do that, because when you go to sew it, that is not how you do it. And it doesn't make sense until you've done it the first time. And so just trust me, do it the way I tell you to do it. And then the minute you do that, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, it worked. So, yeah, because the first time I did it too, I was like, my brain was not wrapping around, like, how? How is that going to work like that? So, anyways, so when you go to cut it out, we're going to lay this out, and you are going to take the waist measurement. I'm using a waist measurement of 28. It's pretty universal for even adults if you want to make an adult one for, whatever. Yeah, I just made Nairo hungry. Let's talk about Oreos. I know, I'm hungry for Oreos too. But so anyway, what we're going to do is you're going to take the waist measurement. So say 28 inches. Then I'm going to cut two pieces, 14 inches long, half of the waist measurement, 14 inches long by the width of, and I'm using 4.5 inches. So I want about a 3.5 to 4 inch wide sash. Now, it's not going to be an exact 4 unless you take 1/4 inch. You can take 1/2 inch seams. And a lot of times I prefer the 1/2 inch seam, and I'll show you why in a second. But anyway, so half of the waist measurement, take 2 of those. So 4.5 by half of the waist measurement. So I'm using 14 since I'm using a 28 inch waist measurement. Then she's rip roaring around here. Sorry. It's so cute to watch her. I wish you guys could see her. She's just having the best time. She had no clue. She had no clue what was out here. There's like no reason to be scared. So then again, 4.5 inches wide by the width of your fabric. And we're going to do, if you're going to do just a knot, you do 2. Actually 4. I'm sorry. You'll do 4. So no, wait, I'm sorry. 2 with a knot, 2 with a bow, 4. Okay, let me repeat that. 4.5 inches by the width times 2 cuts if you're doing a knot times 4 cuts if you're doing a bow. Okay. So that's where a half a yard may not quite be enough. So if you're going to do the bow and you're going to do 4 cuts, you might want just a little over 1/2 yard. Yeah, sash for a dress. Uh-huh. Yeah, no, for right here. Yeah, right here. Yep. So this is like for Easter dresses, or if you're going to a wedding or something. And I've seen people even just do cute little spring dresses, and they'll put a fun sash. That's kind of what this cotton was for. Just a fun little sash, just to change up a dress a little bit. And maybe you already have a dress that she's going to wear or that you're going to wear, and you've always kind of wanted this. You could even turn it around, do the knot, and make it a belt instead of a sash. So there's that. So anyways, yes, A-line dresses, even if you have one that is like tighter here and then it flares out, you could put one here, or if it flares out more at the waist, you could put it right above and over just a little bit of where that gathering is. So you girls know, you've seen the looks. So anyways, what I have now is since again, I'm doing just the knotted one, okay? I have my 2 lengths, the 4.5 inch by the width, and then I've got 2 cuts of the 14 inches by 4.5. So now what I'm going to do is, if you notice, I have these in half, and I actually creased them so that they're nice and crisp, because I'm going to cut along that crease, because we have to put This is in the middle so that your seams end up on the sides of your waist. If we don't do it this way, you're going to have a seam right down the front. And unless you're going to cover that with something like a big old bow or a flower or something, it kind of looks silly. So we want the seams to be on this side right here. So that's why I have this is going to be cut right here. So where did I put my scissors? There they are. So if you go ahead and you iron your crease harder, so you've folded your fabric in half and then you cut, you know how that half up there is like kind of somewhat pressed, somewhat not. Go over to your hot iron and go at it. Just get that in there. Get that seam in there hard. Get that press in there hard. And then all you have to do is cut right along that ridge that you just created with your iron. And it makes it so easy to not even have to worry about, is that in half? So when you go over to your iron, just make sure everything's lined up really good before you put that hard press on it. And then you're going to be able to just pop it in half. Super easy. Okay, so there's that. So then what we're going to do is you're going to sew a long end to one end of the middle part, and then you're going to come back and sew the other long end to that middle part, and you're going to do that twice. So we're going to have that double layer, okay? So that's where we're starting. Now this is where it gets fun. New technology, guys. You get to actually see me and see me sew. What? Let me move my phone here so that you get me as well. I've got to figure out what I'm going to lean it up against. All right. So, yeah. So now you can see me talking. This is so cool. Who knew? Who knew? All right. So what I'm going to do too for my stitching is, you know how when you turn your machine on, if you have the computerized machine, it always turns the straight stitch on to the shortest length. And what is mine? Mine's at, actually mine didn't go to the shortest, but it turns it on to about a 2. Let's go ahead and stay in that because you want this to be a little extra tighter here at these seams that are going to be right at the waist right here, because they're going to take some stress. When you pull this and you tie it, then these seams are going to be taking some stress. So I want that stitch length to be really short. And so we're going to always work with a short stitch length on all of this, just because we're going to be pulling on this a little harder. You don't want it to have a really long stitch length. You're going to end up with pop stitches very easily. It may pucker even when you've got it tied. It may not lay real nice. So keep them super short. So if you have a just a manual machine, and I'm looking at you, Mary, with your brand new, beautiful vintage Singer sewing machine. That thing's gorgeous. Then you want to set that down to about a 1 or a 2. So you move it to the left, not the right, because the right on the manual machines are the longer stitches. To the left are the shorter stitches. So a 0 means you don't go anywhere on those. So you want to set it at about a 1 or a 2. And I would probably, if you're using a manual, I would just do a real quick test stitch on something to see whether you like the 1 or the 2. Now it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. That's okay. We're going to be fine with that. Hey, Carolyn. And then I'm going to run about from the center of my needle to the edge of my foot here is a little over on my machine, runs about 3/8 of an inch. So I'm just gonna, that's what I'm gonna run my seam at. I'm just gonna run the edge of my foot down the edge of my fabric. Now, if you wanna do a 1/2 inch seam, you can do a 1/2 inch. And the reason why I like the 1/2 inch is if you notice, can you see here when I press it? You've got just, you can kind of see that. So the longer that the wider that you have of a seam, the better it looks. So the shorter, the closer, so like 1/4 of an inch or less, it's going to get real bulky right here and just not look the best. And then it also, again, cannot wear very well. So I wouldn't go any smaller than 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, preferably 3/8 to 1/2. And even at these, at the seams right here on your side seams, okay? So all the way around, we're always going to be working at that same exact seam allowance. And this is where visual drives a lot of it. Hey, Angela. Now I'm also going to, a lot of times when you're doing these types of projects where you're going to turn it inside out and then you're going to sew on top, you're going to lock in your seams. I'm still going to lock my seams on these just again because of the wear and the pulling. If it wasn't for that, I would just sew straight and let my seam get locked in when we turn here and do our top stitching. That would be fine, but I'm talking wearability now. So when we have to start dealing with a lot of that, you definitely want to lock your seams. And then always make sure that your needle stops in the down position. All right, so we're going to do this 4 times. 2 on each side, or 2 with each section, I guess I should be saying. So you're going to have 1 on each side of your short piece. I'm trying to figure out where my cameras are here. Sorry, guys. Okay, so here's the other thing you got to pay attention to too on this one. So there's a lot of things, just simple things. And I'm teaching you guys now to really watch what you're doing also. So when you go to sew your other end onto this piece, the shorter piece, make sure you're doing it the same as this one. Because if you do it this way, and here's your seam, and then you do it this way on the other one, then you're screwed up. And you don't have the seam allowance on the inside. It's one's on one side, one's on the other, and you don't want that. You want them both on the same side. So when you go to do this, make sure you're like, oh, nope, okay, this goes here, and you move it to the other side. And if you have to, I mean, a lot of you, if you have to pin, that's not a big deal. Pin it and then open it and make sure before you sew. The first one you don't have to worry about. The second one you do. All right, so I have the first one done. Now we're going to do one more of these. So remember I told you to cut 2 of the shorter ones. So now we take the second one, and remember you cut the other section in half. Take those 2, and you're going to do the same thing again with these. So open it up. Check that you're putting it on the right side. Yep, got my seam on the right side. Match the other one. You'll notice I have my needle still stopping in the down position. Now when I go to sew though, I will pop it to go up and then put it back down, because I notice with my machine, if I don't do that, sometimes it doesn't start very well. And I kind of have to do that. You may not have that problem. And you can serge as well, Miranda. Yes, you sure can. The only thing I'm going to tell you about the serging is you're not going to be able to press these seams open like I'm going to tell you to do. And we really want the bulk out of here, because you're going to have two of those on top of each other. So it's going to get bulky. And if you serge, then you're going to have to make sure you press one way and one the other to make sure that you don't have that bulk, as it gets pretty bulky. But yes, you can serge. I just think the serging may make the inside a little bulky, and it may not finish quite as flat and not show. You could give it a shot and just do a test and take a couple of test pieces of material and do kind of a fake, just a little teeny one, and press it really good and see if you like the look. And if you don't, then it's probably just because it's creating bulk. I am not finishing my seams on the inside here because you do not need to. Again, it would show. These are going to be on the inside. They're not going to fray because you are turning them inside, and then you're going back over with a finish stitch to hold them again. And it's like a double seam in a way, but they're not going to move. They're not going to move. They're not going to fray. So that's where I don't know. I've not used a serger on these, but my brain keeps thinking, ooh, there might be just some bulk. It may not turn out quite as well, and it may be fine. So you're just going to have to give it a shot. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quick let go and iron these flat. So bear with me. We're at the iron back here real fast. And I've already got my iron preheated, so these will go pretty quick. But I definitely want to make sure that they are pressed open and nice and flat. And you guys can't see me, sorry. Oh yeah, you can. Okay. The chair is in the way. All right. Learning these things, guys. This StreamYard's going to be really cool. I've just got to play with it a little bit more, find out what's going on. And then I've got you guys' comments on my computer back here. And yes, it's easier to tell, definitely, if you have print on one side, if you have a fabric that has a print. A lot of times you'll notice, though, you may be doing sashes out of plain colors just because your fabric is printed for your dress. Linen ones are beautiful. You can use like a velour or a velvet. Again, those might be a little stretchy, kind of like a knit. Not as bad as a knit though. So you would be fine with those. Just be aware though, when you go to sew them, they are going to be just a touch stretchier, but they're not going to be like a knit stretchy. Okay, so I have them pressed very nicely flat. So what we're going to do now Let me grab my pins. We'll move this so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to lay my first one with the seams down, okay? So you're going to put the two right sides together. Where did the other one go? I always put it on the back of my chair, and I forgot to do that. Whenever I'm ironing, I always put those things on the back of my chair. Now, what you want to do is you're going to line up your two seams, and you want to pin those together. You want to pin them really good. So when I want to pin really good, I'll do a pinning like that. And I pin right through the seam. And then you want to grab the other seam as well. Line up your seams. I have audio, Liz. We still don't know what it is. I finally had to go to StreamYard. Sandy and Nairo we tried to figure it out. We can't figure out what's wrong with my computer. So this is all good though. I think this is going to be better. All right, so I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay. So top and bottom on both of those. And you want to make sure you do both top and bottom because you want to make sure you're lining them up really well. If you don't do it on one side, I cannot guarantee that they're going to line up very well when you just go to sew it. Michelle. Okay, so I have those lined up. Now, if you were going to do a knit, like I was saying, if you absolutely have to have the knit fabric and you want to do the interfacing, you want to do a light interfacing on it, after you've done this step, then the interfacing goes on the top and you pin that on the top. Trust me. So that is the last step you would do. Or for some reason you want a really stiff one and you want to interface it to give it a real stiff fabric. Then that's the third layer. And then when you go to turn it, that's when it lands on the inside. So now, if you choose to do a 45-degree angle here, we're going to do that after I do my first seam, okay? So I'll show you guys that. We're going to go back over to the machine, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch again, just like I did with my seams, all the way across the top only, okay? That's all we're going to do right now. And then we'll come back and I will show you how to do the 45s super easy. You guys are going to be like, wow, that's really cool. It's kind of a quilting trick. And once you learn this, you're going to be like, you'll use it for so many other things when you go to do stuff because it just makes it so much easier. Again, backstitch when you start on this, and it's because of the way I'm going to do my corners over there. And since I'm using such a short stitch, it takes a little bit to get there. Now, I did not pin the rest of my way. If you want to pin, feel free to. If you don't pin, just make sure you stop and line your fabric up because it will kind of shift off to the side, even just like 1/8 of an inch. So just stop every now and then and just kind of realign it up. And no, you're not doing anything wrong. It just does that. Now I'm getting to my seam and it's just going to go up and over it because I pinned that so well. Now I'm going to try and line it up again because it's wanting to move so bad since I was moving it. and make sure it's nice and lined up. And anytime you see that it's off just a little bit, just stop. I mean, it happens because see, I'm catching it. It's off over here now. So I'm going to stop and line up again. It's just these long stretches. It's just going to do that. And if you have a slipperier fabric like you're doing a satin, you absolutely have to pin it. It'll be all over the place. If you don't, I would be pinning it. Okay. Now I can remove one of my pins. Bring you back here. I can remove this pin. Oh, sorry, this pin, the one that's by the stitching. So I can go ahead and take those two out. But do not take the other one out, because we still have to sew that other side yet. All right, so if you want to do a 45-degree angle, how do we do that? The super easy way. Get yourself a pencil. And you can use a ruler. I have a quilting one, so I'm just going to use that. And it lets me line it up on the edge real nice. So how do we do this? And I will pick this up and show you guys. All right, so I lined up the very point with the edge of my fabric right there. So right there, not with your seam, but with the edge of the fabric. And I drew a line. Now I'm going to just stitch on that line, and then we're going to come back and trim that. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now make sure you have this laid completely flat and that you do the opposite angle. So if you're going, so you went this way on this one. Got to get used to this here. Sorry, guys. You go in that way on that one, then you're going to do the exact opposite on the other side. Okay? Not cheating, Michelle. Not cheating. You want to have a perfect 45-degree angle. It's the only way to do it. Now, I'm going to go stitch on this line. Okay? So let's go stitch it up. And I'm just going to run that line right down the middle of my foot. And again, back stitch, because we're going to be putting some wear and tear on that corner when we go to turn it. And you don't have to do these. You can do just a square corner or a square end if you want. All right, now this is where it gets cool. So we've got that, and now all you're going to do is you're going to come back, and you're going to take a scissor, and I'm going to go ahead and just lightly mark it. See how I want about that much of a seam, and I'm just going to take a scissor and cut that. And there it is. There's your 45-degree angle. It was super easy. It's not complicated. Michelle, that I just showed you how to do it the easy way. So there. There it is. That's how you do that. And then I just cut it again. Just follow that second line. Or you can use your rotary if you want to. Okay. Now, while we're here snipping, you're going to want, so that this turns with a nice point, you want to cut that. You see that? And what I do too is a lot of times to take a little bulk out of it is I'll cut like that as well. So let me do it again on the other side and show you. Okay. So this is how it looks right now. Okay. When I go and cut, I'm going to cut straight across like that. And then I want to take a little bulk out. So don't cut your stitching, but I'll just kind of do that. So you want a little bulk to get your corner to turn really nicely. All right, now we just have one last seam to do, and we're not doing a full seam. So we've got to turn this, right? Okay, I'm going to cut a little bulk out of this corner as well, because this is going to be another point. So I'm going to take just an angle cut like that. And this is just to get clean points. Otherwise, your points get a little bulky and they don't come out real clean. Okay, so I just did that there too. Just an angle cut. Now, last one is you have got to stop somewhere and turn all of this. Let me bring this back around here again. So you're going to want to hide that extra seam or that extra stop-start area. You know how when you flip things, or if you haven't done that before, when you go to flip something and then you go to close it, we're going to close it with the top stitch, but yet it still could maybe show, especially if you're not used to doing it. So what we want to do is we want to try and hide it where you're going to tie it. So to hide it in the knot, we want it to be like in this area here. So here's your side seam. Here's your tail. It's this area. So you want to hide it like somewhere in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a little ways. Then I'm going to stop and you're going to back and stitch because you want to reinforce that. And then I'm going to start about 4 inches ahead of it and back stitch and then keep going and finish sewing all the way out. Okay. And oh, the fishtail. Yeah. Yeah. And then you can do that, Michelle. Yeah, that's pretty fussy. It is really, really fussy. But you can do it. You know, it'd be done very similar to this, only you would fold it in half. So you would take this and say, let's pretend that this is your end here. You would fold it in half like that, and then cut your 45. Only your 45 will start at the cut end and go up to the fold. And then when you open it, you would have that V. And you could practice that on a piece of material, just a scrap, even a piece of paper, so that you understood what you were doing before you did it. But it's always, you always start at the cut edge and go towards the fold down. And then that gives you that fishtail. So let's sew this up and then you guys will see where I stop and start. So if you didn't quite understand, you'll see it. And you could always mark it with a pencil or a pin or something if you're not sure quite where. And you need to figure it out while it's up on your lying flat on your table for you. Okay. Now I'm going to always check still and make sure everything's even while I'm doing this. The cotton is not going to move on me, but if I have a slipperier fabric, it could still move, and then you'll end up with kind of a pucker when you go to turn it. So always double check. Everything's nice and flat. And this is where you can practice your straight seams and a little speed. Be a good project for a little girl if she wants to learn how to sew, because everything's a straight seam, and then you can just help her kind of figure out some of the other parts here. All right, so let me pull my pins out so I don't stick myself. All right, make sure all my tails are trimmed off here. You don't have to, but for me, I've just learned if I don't do that, they're going to end up getting all wound around something. All right, so you can kind of see. Trying to figure these cameras out here. Bear with me. So here's the waist. Let's see, this is the rest of it. Here's the side for the waist. Here's where I started. Here's where I stopped. So here's my open spot between my fingers. So that's where we're going to turn. Now, you're going to want something a little pointy to push these ends out. And what I use, you can use whatever you want. But I use a butter knife that has a little bit of a point to it. And I've seen people use knitting needles. Sometimes the fiber fill comes with a wooden, it kind of looks like a chopstick. It's not, but it has a wooden poker in it with an end on it. I've used those before. Pencils aren't so good because they will poke through. Pens will poke through. So that's why I kind of like, I've used this thing. I use this on my, my industrial for my leather. And it'll hold down stuff when I'm pushing. I've gotten to where I can sew where I push with this and it holds down and I can get it to feed when I'm having some trouble getting some things to feed, or if I see something coming up that I need to just push down so it goes through real nice. So I've learned to be ambidextrous kind of to some degree when I'm doing this. So anyway, just find anything, but I like the fact that this one has a pretty good soft point and I can get right up in there. So anyway, so we're going to turn this, and doesn't matter which end you start with. Trust me, the long end's going to be the difficult one no matter what, okay? So I always like go for the win right away and do the short side. She found her someplace to sit and look out the window. That's so cute. All her firsts that she's learning when she didn't realize she could have had these a while ago. She wouldn't have been so scared. And I love watching her blossom. All right, so pushing my point. Now it's going to be a little bulky no matter what you do. That's why I took the bulk out like I did. And then here was my other side. Remember, I had you take just a little bit of the bulk out so that you'd have a nice little 45-ish angle right there too. So Now I've got one pulled through. Now we just have to turn until we get to the other side. So you're just going to have to work it through. And this is a big tube, so it should come pretty easy. You just keep using your fingers to pull it through. It's when the tubes get really skinny, that's when it gets really difficult. You have to have something that helps you. But it just keeps pulling through. And then if you put interfacing in, this is where you're going to start seeing the interfacing goes on the inside now because of the way that we put it together. Yeah, be careful with the colored pencil, Nancy, just because it can poke through. I've tried them before thinking, oh, I've got that. Boom, right through I went. Even if it was blunt, for some reason, it went through. So, yeah, that's why I kind of went to the kitchen knife. You know, and if you don't have one, you get these at the thrift store for like super cheap. You know, you go shopping for one, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, you just need one?" You're like, "Yeah," and I'm not even gonna tell you why. You're not gonna believe what I'm using it for. But I have used this thing so much in sewing. It's been in my sewing kit for like 10 years. So crazy. All right, so now I'm down to the other end, and I'm just gonna kind of try and work out some of this. And now I'm gonna go and, as you know, in we go to go find that end, and you just gotta pull everything till you get there. So you poke both areas. And you'll know if you didn't get enough fabric out by how this doesn't want to push out very well. And you can always pull it back through and cut just a little more of the bulk out if you want. But it doesn't take much, and you should get a decent point. Now you have to make sure too, if you can see, I thought I had it, but then I went on the other side of the seam and it was showing me that there was just a little more to push out that wasn't quite there because it didn't seem like I had it fully pointed. So I have to go on both sides when I push to get a nice point. Okay, so we've got a nice point there. Now we have to go and iron. Iron, iron, iron on these. Yeah, you can use a Phillips screwdriver. I've used those in a pinch. It does work. Now, how also, and I'm going to give you guys a nice little tip on ironing. To get something like this to lay nice and flat for you when you go to turn, because a lot of times when you go to iron, you have to fuss with it and then it still doesn't want to fold in half very well and you end up folding too much and then you have to go back and play with it. If you take it to your iron, lay it like this. So you lay it flat. So your seam is here and here. Now you don't want to iron this part flat. This part flat. You just want to run the tip of your iron right here and iron that. And you don't even have to push it too hard. Just iron it. And then when you pull it this way, it'll fold nice and flat in half for you. So I'm going to be right over here ironing real quick and I will be back. Okay, so let me show you. I did not iron the sides here flat, but I ironed that. So now, when I pull it apart, it just folds. nice for you. And then you can go back and run your iron over it nice and flat. Now, when we get to this open part here, you're going to want to turn your seam in, and that's the part you want to do last. Turn your seam in. Let me see if I can do this real quick before I show you guys, so that you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so you're going to turn it so it goes in. Okay, you see that? So it'll be nice and flat, and you're going to iron up to that point, and then when you go to do that, it should pretty well turn for you. You may have to move just a little bit between your fingers to get it to go in, but see how it's already kind of doing it for me, and I haven't even ironed. Where am I going here? So right here is where it's at. You see how it's already wanting to turn for me. It's wanting to follow this seam because I already laid this one flat, and now I'm turning it to go and do it the other way. Pressing is such a sewing save. If you press the right ways, it will make your final steps so easy. And it also makes your final press so much better too, because you've already pressed it a couple of times. But your final stitch out on that is going to be so amazing. And people discount pressing, and you can never press enough when you're sewing, especially when you're sewing for like dresses and things like that. You can never press enough. So I take time and make sure my pressing is as if it was a final press before I go to do my final stitch, my top stitch. It's just going to make my top stitch go in so beautifully. It's going to make it look super professional. And I'll even, do a little bit of a steam press. I want this to be pretty much like a final press. And then when I go, after I stitch it and I press it one more time, it's more of a touch-up press than it is anything. Take time and press your points really flat too. And I'm going to show you guys what you may end up having to do when you get to those points sewing wise, because they never want to sew very cleanly. And I'll just show you what I always do. That you guys may have other ways, or some people may know other ways, but I'll just show you what I usually do. And it's just, it goes, I've done it for so long that it just takes me like half a second to do it when I get to those points. And I'll do it even if I'm doing other things and I end up having a bulky area. It just has become second nature. And then press both sides. Don't just press one side of the sash. Make sure you go to the other side. Press it too. It won't be nearly as hard to press the second side. So it's already pretty well flat. You just want to give it a once over. And then make sure you press really good where you've turned your seam to the inside to close it. I'm trimming some tails. I got a few that hung out there. All right, now what I'm also going to do is I want to put a pin at the beginning and at the end where I'm closing, where that seam starts closing. I want to know when I'm getting there that I'm there. And then I'll also, since this is a longer opening, I'm going to put one in the middle. I want to make sure everything lines up really good at the top. And so if I put the pins in, it's going to help line it up for me. Otherwise, you might have one side sticking out over. So you can see I've got 3 pins, 1 at each end and 1 in the middle. All right, and you're going to always have these little pieces. So I just have these, since we didn't finish the inside edge, you're just going to have pieces that kind of stick out when you sewed it together and you flipped it. Just trim them out. All right, now where I start, I want to close this seam first. Very first thing I do. I don't want to leave it to the end. So I am going to start probably about halfway between my pin and my end. So here is the pin closest to the end. You can see here's the pin, here's the end, here's my middle, here's my other pin. So I'm going to start probably about here. And we're going to do just a real quick back stitch. I'm not going to do a lot of back stitch. I do about 1 or 2 stitches. I don't want it to really show too badly. Now this one, I'm going to sew really close to the edge. So on my foot, you'll see I have, grab this to point with. You'll see I have a line on my foot right here. So I'm going to run that line right down the edge and see how that's going to put my needle probably like right about there. Now my seam is actually over to here, so that's okay. It's going to catch that seam and it's going to lock everything in really nice. So that's how close to the edge I want to top stitch. And you can see it kind of, it's going to be maybe about 1/8 of an inch, somewhere around in there. So that's our last step. Now let me get this started, and then when we get to a point, I'm going to show you what I do. But we've got to go all the way down before we get to a point. And then I've got to turn because it's not my thick point. I'm getting to my needle, my pin. So I'm going to pull that out. Keep sewing because I'm closing up my seam. Pull the next one out. Make sure everything's still lined up. That's why I want to do this first, because the sewing is not going to shift when you do it first. It's when you've already got all the way around, and if you do it last, things have shifted, and that's when you may not have it lining up perfectly. So do it first, and the shifting won't happen. Notice I have not changed the length of my stitch. It has stayed the same throughout all of it. I want a short stitch. Okay, going over a little bit of a seam there. Now, depending upon what kind of fabric you've got, if you've got a slipperier fabric, you may have to pin this all the way around. If I had a real slippery fabric like a satin, I would definitely be pinning it. I would not be doing this without pins. Since this is a cotton, it's allowing me to do that. Now I'm going to stitch up to that first corner and kind of eyeball it for the same distance. Turn my corner. This is not a bulky one. This is just the 45. It's when we get up to this other one here. Okay, so this is that point that I kept telling you, take the bulk out and we cut the corner. Now you're still going to end up having to sew up into that bulk, okay? So I'm okay for the moment. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift up my needle. And this is where I'm trying to do this without getting my hand in the way. I'm going to hold onto the fabric in the back, lift my foot just a little and advance the fabric just a little bit, put my needle down, turn. Now it's not going to be a complete V in a turn for a stitch, because of that bulk. You're going to turn it like maybe 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to keep lifting, pulling my needle up, pushing the fabric forward just a little, putting my needle back down. So I'm manually stitching to get through this corner. And if you don't kind of just take it slow, you'll end up with a bird's nest underneath until I get past this bulk. And now it's going to automatically feed for me. And so I'll have to do that when I get to the other end again. You just take it one stitch at a time. You'll have about 5 or 6 stitches that you'll be manually doing. Up to this other point where I'm going to have to do that again. Manually sew through it. Okay, and then on this last stretch, if you do it close enough to the end, you can kind of see, am I lined up? Am I screwed up? Because you want to try and sew up to this edge right here where you started. You want to try and meet that. And since I've just got a short amount, I can kind of shift it over a little or back over wherever I'm off just a little bit, but just try and do it from far away and try and get lined up when you're about an inch or 2 out so that it just kind of comes in if you're not completely straight. And then it really won't visually show that you're not 100% coming in. And since I still have the tails here, it kind of helps me to visually see how far I have to sew. And then you are done. Snip my ends, and then you can always do a final press one more time. And if you want to starch it, you can starch press it if you want it super crisp. But there it is. And there's your other one. Now, if you wanted to get fancy, you could also gather these where you put your 2 together here on the sides. So you could gather them just a little bit and then sew them together. So it would add just a little bit of gathering and pull it in just a little, like right here, and then take it back out again. So that would change that up just a little bit and give it just a little, you know, little fancier look if you wanted that. So we finally got our sash made, guys. It's only taken us, what, 3 tries? But thanks for hanging in with me. But I hope you guys can use these. These are so fun. As you saw, super fast to make. You can make them for even Christmas, a birthday, anything. You can use any fabric. So like I said, if it's stretchy, put a little interfacing in there, and we went over how to do that. And just dress up something. You know, if you've already got a dress and you just want to change it up a little bit, add a sash if it actually works that you can do that. Um, you can use fun plaids, anything. And also fun, like if you use the satin, like I was saying, just remember it moves. So be prepared to pin, 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 pin a lot, pin. I would be pinning a lot if I was doing it. So just know that's what, you're going to want to be doing. All right, let me put this back over here for you guys. Yeah, that's right. That light. I forgot about the light. Kind of burns you. Can't move the light and can't move the camera down far enough. So what else are you guys working on? Anything? Anybody working on something fun tonight? Oh, you bet, Sandy. Thanks for helping me, Sandy. Both you and Nairo, thank you. You guys were a godsend. That's for sure. But I hope you guys use these. If you do, I want to see, I always want to see pictures. Always, always. And the fact that you can do it for, a half to 3/4 of a yard, you can pick up some scrap fabric. You can pick up anything, if you have even like an old man's shirt that means something or whatever, you could maybe do just the centerpiece out of that and then do the ties out of a different fabric if you don't have enough or whatever. Be real creative. These could be really, really fun. Yes, these would be awesome for chair bows. Absolutely. You just make them wider. I chose the 4.5 inches, and I think it came in about 3 7/8 with my seams. So, you can easily make these super wide for chairs. Yeah, and then you just make them longer. So you already know how to do that. And it wouldn't matter so much doing it this way if you're doing them for chairs. Just because I did this just because I didn't want the seam running right in the middle right here. I wanted the seams at the sides of my waist. Oh yeah, super cute for Easter dresses, Mary. Super, super cute. And even like I said, with that, you could gather here, gather them so that they get a little gathering going on. So it'd look a little bit more like that instead of flat. They do this kind of thing and then they'd go straight again. So that would be super cute. All right, Michelle. Well, thanks for joining me late. I try not to get late anymore, but it kind of happened today. I'm hoping we can not do that anymore, and StreamYard will save me from here on out. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up those chair bows, Nairo, because I was thinking about that when I was doing this and I forgot all about that. But yeah, perfect chair bows. Anything. You can even make bigger ones and put them like on your curtains. So like you draw your curtains up and you've got them like behind some kind of a hold. You can easily make a couple of these and make the bows on your curtains. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, if you wanted square, yep, you could do that and make super long. If you wanted square ends, if you wanted the cut ends, then, or the angled ends, the 45-degree ends. Yep. Yeah, you and me both, Mary. I still don't know why that audio just disappeared. I thought I'd figured it out because I'd had one of my videos muted on my channel, and I thought, oh, there it is. That's what happened. So I unmuted it, and you guys still didn't hear me. So that wasn't the problem. Chloe, what are you doing? You haven't figured out how to get under the curtain, have you, to look out the door window? You will figure it out. So, yeah. Well, this works okay. I've got my ears in and you guys can hear me. So that, and you can actually probably hear me better by having my ears in than just doing it with that cam, with the audio on my cam, because I noticed on my video I uploaded last week about market tips, the audio was kind of bad down here just because the room is so big. And I don't remember it being so bad when I was doing my other lives, but that one was, and I don't know why. So, oh well, I will do it on here now and we'll have the ears in and everything will be nice and clear. You can hear me. Oh, she figured out how to get under the curtain. I knew she would. She's a smart little girl. Come here, baby girl. Come here. Do you want to say hi? This is Chloe. Aren't you a pretty girl? Yeah. You get your little 5 seconds of fame. Okay, I know you're busy. You're busy. You got things to do. You got things to go do. Little little mate for Bear Bear. They're having fun. Bear Bear plays with her, and then when she's still not quite a year, and so she gets really kind of hyped up and excited. Plus, she was feral until she got sick and had to come in, and now she's not feral anymore, but she still has some of those extreme reactions where she hasn't learned to pull them in yet. So the other day they were playing and Bear Bear was playing with her, and all of a sudden I think she got a little rough with him and he just kind of backed up and went whap, and she's like, what? And I can see it. I was like, yeah, you got a little rough. So she'll figure that out, but it was so cute. She just kind of laid down right by him, like, I saw we. I don't know what I did, but I saw we. She just loves him so much. But it's fun to watch them play. He's needed a little playmate. They were playing through the cage, and I could tell she wanted to play more, and he was okay with their little bits of playing at that moment. And I was kind of curious when she finally got the courage to come out, how that would go. But he was fine by then. He was like used to her, and he was like, yeah, I'm good. So I don't see any questions. Yes, these are pretty straightforward. They're pretty simple. These are good beginner projects, and you actually feel really accomplished when you get done, but it also teaches you a lot of basic things because you have to learn how to turn everything and you have to learn how to put it together and how to press really well and then how to top stitch. Top stitching is not hard, but it's not easy the very, very first time you do it either. So be kind to yourself on the first one or two or three and you will get it. It just takes a little practice. It's a hand-eye thing, really, is what it is. So go slow. Don't try and do a little speed demon thing like I was doing, and you'll get there. It just takes a few tries. Oh, cool, Miranda. All right, I will go check that out. Yeah, I keep forgetting she's got that also over there on hers. So I need to go look and catch up and see who's posted what. Mary, you will be surprised. Your new baby is going to probably top stitch really well. Really, really well. You'll be kind of like, where have you been all my life? So, yeah, if she's got a good stitch, she's going to top stitch because she's got a heavy, how do I explain this? When you put the foot down and the arm that pushes down, some machines don't push hard. The old singers, I call them heavy. They have a heavy foot because they push down a little harder. Some of the machines, we can go in and adjust that, and it's basically putting more pressure on the pressure foot. Thank you, Angela. You have a good week as well. Some of them you can't. Electronically, you might be able to, but just realize that those old singers have a nice heavy pressure. And that's what makes them pull stuff through so nicely. So I think you're going to find your sewing may improve drastically And that's probably why. And it's not so much that you were not doing the right things. It's just that your machine was probably not necessarily having the amount of pressure that you needed to help you out. Yeah, that's the one thing I miss about those singers is you will notice it the minute you do it. It's like, ah, that's what she's talking about. Yeah, that heavy pressure is so nice. And I forgot about it. And then when I had got my industrial machine, it has one and I can adjust it and make it even harder. And the minute it did that, I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I love that heavy pressure. It just makes everything feed so nicely. What, baby? I know you're getting all excited. Hi. Hi. You gonna come talk again? Oh, Al, be careful. Be careful. She comes over and she wants me to like pick her up and pay attention to her, and she's got like ADHD, so it's like, okay, done now. Thank you. Gotta go. You're just like a little toddler sometimes, aren't you? Short spans of attention and then gotta go, like right now. All right. But she does, she'll come over to me and she'll just be looking at me like, oh, pick me up. And I got to where I sat on the couch with her, and she's never had me like sitting with her until she came out. And she didn't know what to do the first couple of times. And then yesterday, she just curled up right by me. And I was like, oh, you're going to be a snuggler. I love it. Once we get you kind of over all of this, I'm out and running kind of thing and settled down a little. Yeah, I'm talking about you, honey bunny. Yes, I am. She loves being talked to. Watch out there. You got your head stuck through that. Don't do that. Yeah, she loves when I talk to her. And she's wanting me to pet her. And it's like, you're all the way down there. I'm up here right now. Come here, baby. Just want to come back up? Come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. Yeah, you've been running for a little while. You've been out all day. I don't know why you think you don't have your energy out of you. She loves to have her ears scratched, if you haven't noticed, in the side of her head. Hi. And then she'll touch noses with me. She's such a sweetie. And she's purring really hard. Yeah, she is. She is. When she got fixed, she was a feral when she got fixed, and then she got sick with a respiratory infection, and that's kind of when she domesticated with me because she was sick for so long. And then when I got her over that, since it was right after she'd had her surgery, her incision kind of popped open just a little bit from being handled too much. So I had to leave her for another 3 weeks inside to completely heal everything up. So anyway, what I was going to say was whenever the ferals get fixed here in town, they do it for free through the Humane Society. The vet will call you after the surgery and tell you how everything went and when they will be ready to go home. I have never had a vet tell me this before. And he called me and he goes, she is the most beautiful cat I have ever seen. And he's done a few cats, you know that because he's the vet. And he has never said that to me either. And I was like, okay, I always thought she was gorgeous, but I'm also maybe a little biased. But for him to say that, I was like, oh yeah, she's a beauty. And you guys really haven't seen like her body, but she's got like white with a pretty tan and brown kind of calico-ish coloring, and then her tail is like white to chocolate. So she's got Siamese in her, and then she's also, I think that she's got a little bit of like an orange tabby also, but she's mainly, her mama was mainly white. So that's where her white's coming from. Don't you get playful. And she still gets playful and does like the love bites. And she's right by my feet, rolling around, getting ready to give me a love bite right into my non-shoed feet. She got me yesterday when she was laying underneath me. She got me right here in the really sensitive part. And she didn't bite hard when she does a love bite, but it's just firm enough that you know she's there. But it scared me, but it was also in this sensitive spot. And I was like, okay, I know you're there. So a little silly, but she definitely gets excited and gives you a love bite, which I love, but I know it freaks some people out. But I think it's super sweet when the kitties do that, because that means they really, really love you. And she's on the floor rolling around. I still can't believe her belly hasn't grown in. It's getting there, but you can still see where they shaved her stomach. It's pretty evident. All right, guys. Well, I think I ran out of things to talk to, and you guys are getting quiet, so I think I'm gonna let you guys go since we're later. Anyways, I usually like to be done and let you guys have the rest of your Sunday evening to kind of wind down and get going. But I think I'm loving the StreamYard. I hope you guys are loving the StreamYard. I think this is where we're going from here on out, and I like the fact that I was able to move the camera a little easier and let you see what I was doing over here on the sewing machine. So I think that's going to be a huge plus for me. You guys maybe will be able to see things a little easier. So anyway, thanks for hanging in with me. Thanks for going through the pain with me of getting through this. Why is my audio not working, guys? And I'm glad you hung in there. So anyway, I hope you have, she just nipped my foot. I hope you have a wonderful week. And now we're going to be 2 weeks from today for the next live, which actually works out pretty good because it gets my lives off of my market weekends. So that actually kind of worked out pretty good. So anyways, I will see you guys for the next live in 2 weeks. And if I do one in between, you'll see it pop up. I don't know. I don't like to make a promise on the in-between weeks because now I've got market coming this next weekend, but we'll see what happens. You never know. I just may show up in your little notifications. So we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for joining me, and I love you all. Bye.